One of the biggest problems with people's growth journey is exactly what you said: people, processes, and tools. What do you do to kind of dive in and help people understand, hey, I think this is your problem and this is what we're going to do about it?
I think fundamentally businesses, they have kind of the same chassis or the kind of the same build to them. So basically what I do is I try to look at those areas very quickly and see how those are doing. And then at that point, that's usually where then we can kind of follow the trail, down the river of where there's
Right.
or what the problems are. And then if I get some things where it's like, oh, my team never listens to me every time I come up with new ideas. Okay, that's the downriver problem. So let's go upriver and see, how are you communicating that, or how is this happening? And so basically what I try to do is just identify very quickly those bottlenecks in the operation that are really causing problems and really work to eliminate those. And
hey, welcome back to the show. And today I've got a very kindred spirit with me to talk about growth and scaling on a systematic level, because it is all about systems. Joshua, help us understand this. Who are you and what do you do? And how do you help people with their growth journeys?
Sure. So my name is Joshua Monge, and I work as a fractional COO, or Chief Operations Officer. And basically I help people get their business structured and organized. And basically, businesses, they had something that they got started,
Right.
they were excited for it, they're growing, and then they get to this place where they're like, wait, who are all these people? And what's all this stuff? And I have all these orders, and I have all this money, and I have all these things. And it's just, they're going from maybe part-time working or working 60, 40 hours, then 60 hours, the next thing you know, they're 80 hours.
Right.
So I love basically kind of walking in and helping people get those things structured and organized, reallocate those tasks to different team members.
I love it.
And I do a lot of that through process mapping and process visualization.
I love it. So walk me through that, because I hear on this podcast quite a bit that one of the biggest problems with people's growth journey is exactly what you said: people, processes, and tools. Those three words come up in almost every interview I've ever done. So walk us through that. What do you do to kind of dive in and help people understand, hey, I think this is your problem and this is what we're going to do about it?
Well, fortunately, one, you talk to a business owner long enough, just for a few, first 5 minutes, they're, who are you? What are you doing? Like, why do you want to know what my business is?
Right.
Once you get past that, though, then they know pretty quickly, hey, these are my source points, or these are choke points, or these are things I'm frustrated about my business.
Right.
And then as a consultant, I basically coax that out through some leading questions and try to look at certain diagnostic areas. Because I think fundamentally businesses, they have kind of the same chassis or the kind of the same build to them.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah. So if it's, and I focus on service-based businesses. So then we're kind of, there's a clear delineation, because product-based businesses, that's another thing. So with service-based businesses, it's very much about, making your product, making your service known in the market. So when you have, that's what marketing and sales is. So everyone has to deal with that. Then you usually have an intake process. Then you have to deliver on what you promised. You have to show that you delivered on what you promised. And then there's some sort of back end, continuous marketing. So, and there's collecting money somewhere in there.
Yeah.
No, my framework, I missed 2 steps. Yeah. So there's the collecting the money. There's also the fulfillment piece too.
Yes.
So basically what I do is I try to look at those areas very quickly and see how those are doing. And then at that point, that's usually where then we can kind of follow the trail, down the river of where there's or what the problems are. And then if I get some things where it's like, oh, my team never listens to me every time I come up with new ideas. Okay, that's the downriver problem. So let's go upriver and see, how are you communicating that, or how is this happening? And so basically what I try to do is just identify very quickly those bottlenecks in the operation that are really causing problems and really work to eliminate those. And the best way to do it is documentation. You could say,
totally agree,
27 times, oh, sales department never gives us, they never fill out the paperwork right. It's like, okay, but let me see the documentation, and then let me show me how the process is supposed to work.
Right.
And it's funny because you've probably seen this too. You talk to the
Oh,
sales guys, they're like, this is the way the process works. But then you talk to customer service that has to take in the orders. They think something else is happening. And so,
totally.
yeah.
Totally.
So if you map that all out.
There's a huge disconnect. It's like you got your product team, you got your sales, your marketing, and then you've got customer service. All four of those teams are rarely on the same page. So how do you solve it?
So best way to solve it is you treat everybody like a customer. So when somebody goes from a sales team over to customer service, basically we get feedback from customer service to say, hey, how is sales delivering this to you? Do you like it? Is this going well? And so when we map the process out, we say, okay, now you get this from sales. And then we basically will say like, well, sales says they only have to fill out the name and the phone number and how much money it is. And customer service is like, no, we want to know like email address because in case we have questions and we need to know if it's sold. And so basically what we do is we map out several different maps, and then we look for where the gaps are. There's where the opportunity to say, okay, here's the motivation points. Here's why you have those. And then we work to address those.
I love it. And are you actually providing these services, or are you saying, let's plug someone in here to fix that problem? Or what does it typically look like on your engagements?
So as a fractional COO, this is where we're a little different than maybe a consultant or a coach. A coach is the guy that's like, rah, 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 you can do it. I'll check in with you in a couple of weeks, make sure everything's okay. Consultant says, hey, by the way, that's on fire and that has potential to be on fire. You should probably deal with that, and I'll be back in a week. Fractionals should be the ones that say, hey, by the way, we see a fire. I'm going to go grab some shovel and dirt and some water and figure out how to put that thing out. So,
Fair enough. I
like that. My engagements, I do want to help solve problems, and I actually want to push things forward. And then as an operations person, I'm a terrible salesperson. You don't want to hire an operations person if you're trying to move fast and nimble, because all they're going to do is slow things down and try to be structured and organized. But depending on what your motivation is and what you're trying to get done. But if you want to slow things down and get things fixed and have them, take a step back, build that structure that you need to then get that next growth going and to get that speed, sometimes you have to slow down to speed up. I know it sounds counterintuitive, but.
No, it's 100% accurate. And I feel like even from a marketing perspective, I do a lot of fractional CMO work. It is a matter of understanding, why are we doing this activity? And if this is the one that's helping us the most, how do we replicate that 100 times instead of trying to make it up every time we do it for the first time?
Yeah. And I think this is where having documented processes is great. And then, when you have those documented and everyone agrees, this is how we're going to do it, you now have kind of essentially a third party that's kind of managing that relationship and almost like a contract. So then it's not the supervisor that's trying to get on this person, but it's the fact that, hey, this is the way we're supposed to be doing it. And this is the way we all agreed to do it. So how are you in alignment with this, or how are you not? And then how do we get you into alignment?
So Joshua, when you are meeting with someone in a $500,000 to $5 million range, and they look at you and say, dude, I am the operations, how do you help them? What are the first things you look at and say, you should not be the operations because of this, this, and this? Like, how do you start that conversation, and how do you get them to kind of buy in that, okay, I am the bottleneck. Yeah. I am not the operations.
So this is the hard part. And I think, as a consultant, I don't take everything that comes my way, because I have to be able to know that I can help the person, that they're in a place to be helped, and then I can actually make an impact for what they're paying me. So I'm very concerned about that. And so I have this initial kind of intake process. I meet with the person and I'll talk to them. And once I realize, wow, this person's actually at a place where they're like, okay, my knowledge, my expertise, my team, everything I have is taking me to this point, but I can't, it's not sufficient because I'm still, half a mile from where I need to be. How do I get there? I can come in and then give them those insights and help them. And I'll tell you right now, and this will disqualify me really quickly from a lot of people that are probably listening right now, but they say that the fish stinks from the head. So if you're having problems in the organization, I'm sorry, it's leadership. It's your business. You built it. That's great. But what the other caveat to that, though, is that
Yeah.
processes and everything that got you here is not necessarily what you need to get to the next leg or do that next destination.
Totally agree. Yeah.
So it's not a diss on like, hey, you were a bad leader or you weren't whatever, but it's that everything that you set up and that you've allowed happen and that you orchestrated has created the situation you're currently in. And so to get to a better place where you can scale and grow, you're going to have to change some of your behavior, some of the way that you've built the organization so that it can have more people on board. You're not the bottleneck for everything, and we can bring people and grow. So
I love it.
Yeah. So you could very quickly see why I would have to say you have to recognize as a leader that it starts with you.
Yeah.
And then from there, everything else kind of folds out from underneath that.
I am so glad you're here. And I just wanted to take a few seconds to tell you about a program that we have assembled with a lot of our podcast guests and a lot of people who are listening to the show who are feeling the same way that they do. There's a recurring theme. You'll hear a lot of these founders talk about, I couldn't have done it without my team. I couldn't have done it without a support group of peers. I couldn't have done it without having someone to talk to that understood my feeling of isolation as an operator of my business. You see, you're not alone. It is hard running a business, and it's even harder when you know you can't express all your deepest concerns and frustrations with your executive team. It makes them nervous. It gets them scared. You don't want scared people on your executive team. So where do you turn? The Captain's Council is where you turn. The Captain's Council, it is an organization that we are put together with podcast guests, as well as people who are listening who are in the same boat. You see, peers are the only ones that can give you the type of empathy, the type of advice that only a founder or operator know and understand. Go check it out at captainscouncil.com. I know you're going to love what you see there. We have put together an organizational structure that has small group settings, a global community of founders and operators, as well as monthly and quarterly in-person events. You're going to love what you see there. I can't wait for you to check it out and enjoy the rest of this episode. For those of you listening, I hope you are paying attention because it likely is you. I think that unless you're completely a perfect individual, most bottlenecks in businesses are going to be your fault. Either you didn't outline a process completely, or you need to be the one checking things off before they get done, or just a lot of stupid things that we do as business owners that put us in the position to be the bottleneck. And once you learn to stop doing that, that's when you actually start to experience the most growth. So Joshua, when you get into a situation, there's a level of humility, I think, that a lot of founders need to kind of embrace of, I don't know how to do this as awesome as maybe I could, to kind of getting into that humble situation where it's like, you know what? You're right, man. If I could hand this off and only focus on these two things, I could take this business to the next level, blah, 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 blah. Like, where do you get them in that happy place?
Yeah, so to do that, there's kind of two paths that we take, and anyone listening, you can do this without paying me. Again, I told you I'm a terrible salesperson. So one is to do a time audit. So actually go through your day, write down tasks that as you remember them. If you're really good, you can do like Pomodoros, where you basically, it's 25 minutes, you work intensely and then you take a 5-minute break. So whatever you did for that Pomodoro, write that down. And then what I would do is see, like, is that a task you absolutely had to do, or is that something that somebody else could do? And
sure.
And so if you do an inventory, if you do a time audit, that's one way to do it. The second way to do it, and this is the one that I help people with, is what we'll do what we call visual process mapping, where we'll sit down with Lucidchart and I'll actually like write out a step. So my favorite example was one of my first clients I got. They do outbound like lead generation. And so then they have this whole lead validation process. And the owner's like, I've got this down. He's like, it's 10 steps. We're got it. It's solid. I was like, great. Let's just talk through it. Like, let's just go into the easy one then. We go through it. It's actually 35 steps. And there's like redundancies, and there's information being handed on like Excel spreadsheets, and it's being emailed, and it just, I was like,
Right.
dude, like,
Right.
yes, you guys have nailed that, but do you know that it takes you about 60 hours to get this process done? By the way, if we get a
Right.
couple shortcuts and fix things here, we can make that more efficient. So, but sorry, let me get back to the owner though, trying to do this.
Totally.
Sit down, write down your process, and then write down each of the steps that you have to do, who has to do it, right? And so then
Right.
all those ones that you see your name next to, now see if that's something that you can actually hand off to somebody else, right? And then you can start creating a short list of things that you're like, oh, why do I do that? And I'll give you a great example. In my own business, we use ClickUp for all of our task tracking, for all of our information.
Right.
I have someone, and I don't know if I'm allowed to swear on this or not, but she's my chief ass kicker. And so she will go through my ClickUp and make sure that everyone is on task, that things are moving forward, and everything's checked off. I used to do that, and I would spend hours because I would see something not done, and then I would go do it, or it wasn't done, and I would
Totally.
So, but now
Totally.
she does it. So now when she tells me, hey, by the way, this isn't done right, I was like, great. So what happened? She goes, oh, I just followed up with the person that was supposed to do it, and they took care of it. I'm like, oh, okay, great.
Right.
Seriously. I mean,
amen.
I don't have to do that. So I would say those two methods are probably super helpful. Do a time audit, or do like a process, like write out some of your processes and then label who's supposed to do those different tasks, and then review that. I think those are two quick tips.
I think that's fantastic advice. I have done time audits before, and I've always been astounded at how much time I waste on things I shouldn't be doing. I haven't done one in the last year. I would say it's probably about time for me to do that again, because we all get this scope creep of just what we know we should be doing. We start doing more and of stuff we shouldn't be doing, instead of doing the opposite. As a business founder operator, I think this is for everyone. I think you would probably agree with me on this. We all need to be learning how to delegate better, not to take on more projects.
Oh my God.
And
yes.
And the better we get at delegating, and the better we get at outlining what needs to be delegated, we become better delegators. And so there has to be this flow of information, of delegation, of tasks. And I love that you mentioned ClickUp. We're big ClickUp advocates. I highly encourage people to be using that or a tool like that that helps you organize and structure projects and programs. But Joshua, as you start to, your engagements, it sounds like there's a timeline on them most of the time. Yeah. How do you determine when you're wrapping things up? I mean, it feels like every time a business reaches a certain stage of growth, there's a new set of problems.
Right.
How do you actually get them into a place, into a flow where they say, okay, in 6 months, we're going to be there. I think we're going to need to implement this.
Yeah. So, lots of reading, lots of learning, lots of studying.
Right.
And I think, as an operations person, I'm trying to get a base level documentation and processes in place at the core of the business. And so that's where my strength is. So kind of maybe you would consider me like a minor league coach, right? I'm the guy that takes the people right out of high school, or the new the business owners that are doing okay, but they're growing without a whole lot of intentionality. They're just missing some of those core pieces. I help build those core pieces in. So then once those are implemented, then we get to the next phase of like, okay, now you're taking on bigger projects, you're doing product development, you're doing R&D, you're doing these other components. Am I the person to go with you on that journey? And there are, like, I just wrapped up an engagement with one of my clients, longest clients that I've had, 2 years. Now at a place where he found someone to replicate him that takes care of the like proactive pieces. And so vision cast, then she can execute and oversee and implement. And then what I did was I got them using ClickUp. Every meeting has an agenda.
Love it.
We have task, like every task has someone that's responsible for it. It has a due date. Our SOPs, that everything is not SOP'd, but we have the core processes are SOP'd. So then, and then I taught her how to write SOPs. I taught her how to do the follow-up on it. And so he has now an operations person that's at a way cheaper rate than me that can execute this. And then now when he hires people, like we kind of made some rules too. You can't hire somebody unless you have a job description.
Right.
We need to know exactly what they're doing. And then we have we've created a lot of structure and organization and created some rules, which it's fun for me with an engagement because I tell the CEO, hey, listen, I'm here to help structure and organize everything. It's definitely your business, so you can break whatever rules you want, but I'm going to be here to remind you, by the way, we set these rules. Now you're breaking the rules. So there you go. And
that's awesome.
And I think for some of these folks, having somebody in your business that actually cares about your business, wants it to grow, wants it to succeed, and can talk to you in a real way, I think that's important.
Right.
And I think this is where it becomes a challenge when they try to hire consultants or other people. Sometimes they become yes people because they want to keep that revenue going.
Yeah.
And for me, I'd rather end an engagement knowing that I've got an ally and a resource now, because anyone that wants to talk to a previous client, I'm like, hey, talk to this guy. He'll be more than willing to tell you exactly what I can do for you.
Love it. So that's a good recipe for I think everyone listening too is if you're solving a specific problem for clients and you solve the problem well, they shouldn't need you forever. That being said,
whoa, you're like, wait a second, what?
That being said, if you're a business founder and you need consultants, find different roles for it. If someone's helped you solve a problem really, really well, there's a good chance they can probably help you solve a different problem. I have a relationship right now with a client that's a $180 million a year company, and they have several consultants managing different parts and different elements of their flow. And it's fascinating to watch because I've never been in quite that type of environment where there were so many of us consultants managing different things that overlapped that we had to have conversations and say, okay, where are you taking your services to? Because I'm trying to take it here.
Yeah.
And it was fascinating. It is fascinating because we're still in the engagement. But it's an interesting model. When you get to the level where you've got that many moving parts, it's okay to take a good consultant who's helped you solve one problem, have them help you solve a new problem.
And
thoughts on that?
Yeah, and I was going to say, I think that's one of the challenges with operations is usually you solve one problem, and then because it was a bottleneck, right? So when you look at the flow of how everything's flowing, that you fix that bottleneck, now it creates a problem somewhere else because all of a sudden maybe sales was holding up everything, and now that you fixed the sales pipeline problem, now all of a sudden fulfillment's like, wait, what's all these orders coming in? Tell the salespeople to stop. Which, by the way,
I love it.
Never tell the salespeople to stop. So then fulfillment all of a sudden now has to figure out how do we make sure that we one, don't overcorrect for the flood that's initially coming in, because maybe there's not a pipeline continuously, right? It's just a flood because that we fixed the bottleneck. But anyway, as an operations person, you fix one bottleneck, it usually creates another, and it's really important, and I want to encourage anyone that is a consultant, when you have that happen, make sure you articulate to the client, but remember, we solved this other problem. That's why we have this new problem, because otherwise your engagements are always, hey, you're always creating problems for me, and they always forget about all the solutions that you solved for them.
That's awesome. Very, very good point. Very good point. So two ends of the spectrum here. As a consultant, you got to make sure you're pointing out, hey, we did fix this problem, and that's why we've got this. From someone who hires a consultant's level, and you're growing your business, I do have this tendency to believe that most of us, until we reach a certain point where we are a 9-digit company where we're doing, hundreds of millions of revenue, there is always room for strong consultants to help you adapt and build new roles for people that you should be adding to your company. In your case, you helped build a role and a defined purpose for a COO in that company.
Yeah.
And you built it, you designed it, you trained them, and now they took it over. From a business owner's perspective, I really think it's important to hire fractionals. I think that fractionals and consultants fill a really healthy role in developing a growth strategy for you and your business.
Yeah.
Help me out here. What do you see in your current list of clients that what other roles should they be thinking about fractionally so that it's not someone like you trying to come in and be the sales, be the marketing, be the everything guy.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I think so. I mean, for fractional COO in particular, we don't come. We're not the first one that people call.
Yeah,
They usually call CMOs because they have a product or idea or service, and they're trying to get more people to buy whatever it is.
sure.
Or they'll hire the finance guy because or person, sorry, because they have investors or they've gotten a loan
Yeah.
or they've got something, and so we're like the third consideration. Um, but I think when you're having,
Very self-aware,
yeah,
Joshua.
yeah, I am. Well, see, I got to know where I fit. So I think having an operations person will help you once you've gotten through some of the early stage, like practicing training, getting those things together. As far as like the other roles, I'm actually forming a fractional co-op group that we're going to do this. So one flat rate, you
Cool.
get access to a team. And so it's funny that you asked this question. I think the nice thing about hiring consultants and fractionals even for a short season is you get outside perspective. You
Sure.
get someone that basically they're not W-2, right? So they're
Yeah.
if you need to let them go because whatever, like, hey, they're
It's okay.
part of the game. I mean, seriously.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and I think the other one is, you definitely want to fill wherever it is that you have a shortage in your kind of plan for your business.
Totally.
So even on the marketing front, hiring someone to the initial marketing setup is one person, but then maybe the next person is the go-to-market, product launch
Yep.
with the 10,000 people signing up in a
Totally.
day, right? So,
Totally.
but and I think a good consultant hopefully knows where they start and end, and then how to refer out to that next one, or helps you
Yeah.
make that introduction to that next person.
I love it. I think that it just in reviewing in my head this conversation, I really feel like the important thing that I want everyone to really capture from the conversation is that it's okay to hire fractionals,
Yeah,
first of all. It's probably way more important than hiring someone or bringing up a buddy who says they're really good at marketing to come and do marketing, or someone really good at operations to come in and build operations.
yeah,
Having someone like you or another type of fractional to come in and set up the parameters for what your business actually needs,
right.
create those roles, and then plug someone in when you're ready.
And
And
Todd,
yeah, go ahead.
it's like it's a top down approach too.
Yeah,
Because you take the guy that's been with you or the person that's been with you for a really long time, and you keep promoting them up. That's great, but they have all that history and internal knowledge of everything that's happened
totally.
in the past, and sometimes they can't make that switch to all of a sudden looking at numbers and looking at a dashboard and then basically making decisions based on that. And so having somebody come in and build that framework for that, even for that person to
Love it.
into, I think it's a good
Yep.
thing.
I love it. I love it. I think this is really healthy conversation. This is something that for those of you trying to consider your next step in your growth and development in building out your business into a bigger level, you've got to consider these things. It is so often people, processes, and tools. And as you bring in the right types of people to help you deploy the right processes and build the right growth strategy and systems, the tools will come along and you'll recognize, I need something to help me do that.
Right.
Boom, you plug in the right tools. Joshua, I think that what you've done today is fantastic for our audience and helping them be thinking about their next hires or the next fractional hires.
Okay, good.
Any other last thoughts you'd like to leave off with our audience today and what they should consider in finding the right partners like you?
Well, I definitely want to give this message from an operations standpoint of document what you have and get things running to where if you're the business owner, you're not the choke point and you're not the be all end all of the business.
Right.
That transition from founder to actual business owner that has a business that can run without them, you need that
Yep.
documentation. And even if you're not selling your business or you have no vision for that, by doing it now and implementing some like continuous improvement and documenting
Yeah.
as you go along, I think will help in case like Florida, we just had that big hurricane, and then
Sure.
There's maybe you're getting a divorce or whatever life happens, your business might actually have to be in a place where it has to transition or shift. Having something documented, having something structured and organized in a way that can help you kind of ride through those times, or you can get that valuation if you need it or whatever.
Right.
It's better to do some prep now and then later.
Love it.
So the operation documentation is not just because, hey, hire a consultant to do that for you, but it's also, I think, helps hedge against any potential hiccups in the future.
Totally agree. Totally agree. I love it. This has been a really fun conversation, and I hope for those of you listening, you got something more out of it than just our fun conversation. I hope you learned what it feels like from a fractional side to be helping companies who need those fractionals, and how to kind of evolve into what's my next hire going to be? How do I fill that role? And then what do I do with my fractional if I really like them? Where do I plug them in next? I think that's a fun conversation to have.
That's fun. Thank you. Yeah, Todd, this was really cool. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Cool. I appreciate your time too. And for those that want more information on what Joshua is up to, all of his contact and information is in the show notes below. So do check him out. And I feel like operations is probably the second most important thing after marketing. I'm just kidding. But
there's some
I definitely feel like it's an important role you need to consider, because processes will lead to growth. And if growth is on your radar, you need a fractional COO to help you develop those things out. So Joshua, thanks so much again.
Todd, thank you so much. I really appreciate the conversation.
Hey, thanks so much for being part of the interview. We hope you enjoyed that conversation. Joshua and I had a fun conversation. We had a fun post-conversation. Everything about this interview was kind of fun, kind of different, in that he's a fractional, and I quite enjoyed it. So if hiring a fractional is in your future, I highly recommend looking into the types of roles that you need fractional help with. Where are you strong? Where are you weak? Where are the points in your business that you should probably plug somebody else into? Take our growth readiness assessment. Check out growthreadiness.com. Take our free assessment and understand what is keeping you from reaching that next stage of growth. I think you're going to be as interested as I am in figuring out what it is that's keeping you from growing. And chances are systems, processes, and tools are the thing keeping you from doing it. So listen, take the assessment, keep listening to these podcasts. You're going to learn so much from the people we have on here, and I hope it helps you get to the next stage of growth. Thanks so much for being a part of the program, and check out growthreadiness.com.